إذا في شيء أستاذ
Good evening. Welcome everyone. It's a great pleasure and honor to have all of you here tonight in this second public lecture in the new series of Al-Furqan Islamic Heritage Public Lectures events that take place in London. As you know, we used to organize many more lectures before, but then for a while, for a period of time, they stopped, and we are resuming now with those kind of lectures. This is the second one. I'm happy to see many of you who attended the first lecture as well, so it's a good continuation for them tonight. If you remember, the first lecture which was delivered by Professor Qasim, we somehow tackled a global issue, a kind of overall overview about the world of Islamic manuscripts. We called it Islamic Manuscript Studies for the 21st Century. And he gave an overview about the condition of the Islamic manuscripts, the importance of them, the interest about the Islamic manuscripts, and the need for the study of that subject in future. While tonight, we are somehow continuing in the same direction with the Islamic manuscripts, but we are more or less concentrating on a more narrow and not less important topic, which is the critical edition of manuscripts, past, present, and future. As you can notice from the title itself, it's quite a broad lecture, and I'm sure that our distinguished guest tonight, lecturer, Professor Qasim al-Samarrai, will give justice to this subject, even though in a very limited time frame. Just before we start, I would like to remind you about a few technical issues. The program of tonight, actually we are just starting with these words. We'll have a welcoming word by one of our board of directors members, Mr. Sharaf Imani, who is joining us tonight in a few minutes. But then we'll start immediately with the lecture itself by Professor Qasim. A lecture will last for an hour, and after that we'll have a half an hour discussion, and then after that for 5 minutes, it's quite an exciting night for us tonight, just to go live with our new website, which I hope you'll like it, and it will be our window to our readers, partners, and cooperators, hopefully. So that's the first one. There are some brochures in front of you, whoever had the chance to grab one of them. At the very back of the brochure there is a program, and inside we try to give an overview about the Al-Furqan work in the field of editing done so far during these last 2 decades. So you find kind of summary for each of the edited works published by Al-Furqan. There are around 16 titles in almost 36 volumes. The second thing I wanted to remind you, if you don't mind, please just either switch off your mobile phones or turn them into silent mode. And the third one is the fire exit. We have got one in the corridor, one at the end of the other corridor, just 3 gates. And yeah, the restrooms are at the very end of this corridor on your right-hand side. Ladies and gentlemen, the Al-Furqan Islamic Heritage Foundation, when it was established initially in the year 1988, its main aim and objective was to preserve, survey, catalogue, and study the Islamic manuscripts. By the time its scope of work and expanded, but still it remains within its main interest, which are the Islamic manuscripts. It started in the beginning, as many of you know and you heard whoever attended the previous lecture, it started with a very ambitious project of surveying the Islamic manuscripts all over the world. A work and a project which ended up in 4 years with one of the books which we are very proud of, is the World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts. That was the first step. The second step taken by the foundation was start cataloging after surveying, after identifying the main collections, the main manuscripts, the most important collections throughout the world, Islamic world. The next step was to start a catalog, starting with the countries which are endangered, like many African countries, Balkan countries, and so on. The very next step, which is not less important in this direction, is the editing of manuscript. And Al-Furqan actually didn't neglect this part. And even though we started quite late in this direction, but a lot of work has been done so far in the last 2 decades, and we aim to expand and to improve and extend our work in this direction much more. To talk about this topic just in very brief points, I would like to invite, I'm honored to invite actually Mr. Sharif Yamani, which is the member of the board of directors of Al-Furqan, to give a welcome, some welcome words, and also to give us a very short brief about the Al-Furqan work in the field of critical edition of the editing of manuscripts. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sally. Well, on behalf of the Al-Furqan Islamic Heritage Foundation Board of Directors and its chairman, Sheikh Ahmed Zaki Yamani, and on behalf of the Al-Furqan family, managing director, heads of departments, staff and associates, I would like to welcome you all to our lecture. And as Sally mentioned, tonight we continue our long-standing engagement with the community by presenting the fruit of our Islamic heritage. Now, along the way, we have been blessed with the opportunity to work with notable researchers, philologists, qualifications, like Professor Qasim al-Samarrai, who tonight will take us through a journey of enlightenment. I'm delighted to welcome him, and I very much look forward to your speech. Now, before we go to that, please allow me to take a few minutes to highlight some of the work we have been doing in the field of Islamic manuscripts. Now, as Sally mentioned, almost a quarter of a century ago, our foundation was established initially with the aim to document and preserve the Islamic written heritage. One of our earliest projects was to investigate as comprehensively as possible the collection of Islamic manuscripts all over the world. Now, it was quite an ambitious project. I'd say scholars were identified and commissioned to survey somewhere along 106 countries. They say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step. Now, in this case, the World Survey of Islamic Manuscript, once it was published, which I hold a copy of it here, was really a gigantic leap by the foundation. And it is until this day considered one of the most wide-ranging survey and guide, and both in terms of countries and languages covered. So we're quite proud with the achievement early on in our history. And as many of you have known, the foundation is also focused on cataloging different manuscripts or collection of manuscripts, both in private collections and also in public libraries, and mainly in areas that are risky and deprived from funding and support. So far, we have published 30 catalogs in 68 volumes and recording approximately 65,000 manuscripts. This is worldwide. Now, another important area the foundation has not neglected is the editing of manuscripts for publication. a subject for which we are gathered here tonight. Now, we have published edited works done by prominent professors and scholars within our 5 disciplines. We have the Quranic discipline, fiqh, or Islamic jurisprudence. We have the history and science disciplines, and we recently also included Palestine as a discipline and an area we would like to concentrate on. So far, we have published 16 books in 35 volumes. And as you probably walked in along with your programs, you saw within it a list of those publications. And as I mentioned before the speech, my favorite amongst them are Wafa al-Wafa and also Al-Rawda al-Firdawsiyya, which Professor Samarrai has edited for us. So we're quite proud of that, for that. And moving on, we also organized special training courses in the sphere of edited Islamic manuscripts. So far, we have done 3 international courses. The first 2 were in 2008 and 2009. They were done organized with the faculty of Dar al-Ulum in Cairo University. And the third was done this year in June, organized with the Center for Editing Text, Markaz Tahqiq al-Nusus, at Al-Azhar al-Sharif University in Cairo. We were very happy with the attendance. All came from all walks of life and different disciplines. Now, I don't want to take a lot of your time. I just wanted to shed the light on some of the work we are doing here. All couldn't have been done without, obviously, God's blessings and really the vision and guidance of our chairman, who apologizes for not attending tonight, but he's here in prayers and spirits and with all of us. And also, I would also like to acknowledge the exceptional efforts exhibited by everyone associated with this foundation, from top to bottom. Now, I hope you enjoy this lecture, and I will let Sally present our speaker. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Sherif, for joining us tonight, actually, for this briefing on the main stations of Al-Furqan work in the editing of manuscripts. As you know, it is said in the world the number of manuscripts vary from 3 million to 5, less, more, a lot of dispute about the number. Whatever the real number is, there is one reality, is the fact that as much as it is important to survey all these manuscripts, to locate them, to catalog them, but all that kind of work would have been, again, in the dark if someone wouldn't go in those archives and open them and start to edit them. So, as much as we may create even poetry about the importance of manuscripts and how important they are, how valued they are, and all these sort of interesting words said about the manuscripts, that they hold a lot of treasures, they are very important and so on. But if no scholar gone to those archives and start to edit them, we wouldn't have received that amount of knowledge and pride which we find in those old manuscripts. Hence, here comes the importance of editing the manuscripts. It is said that also out of those 3 to whatever million manuscripts, Islamic manuscripts all over the world, with their copies and so on, only a couple of thousands so far have been edited, which means that a great deal of them are still left around, scattered around, maybe some of them rotted and endangered to be destroyed and to be lost forever. So such kind of world treasure, humankind treasure, really deserves a bit more care and effort and concentration. And luckily, Al-Furqan has been blessed, as mentioned before, to have such scholars who tirelessly have given a lot of efforts throughout this 25 years of existence. starting in a very methodological shape, starting with a survey, with a cataloging, then editing one by one manuscripts, obviously concentrating on certain areas, because as you know, there's always important and more important and priority and so on. If you see globally in the Islamic world, most of the manuscripts edited so far has been in terms of hadith, the fiqh, and all Islamic, general Islamic sciences. Very little have been edited in terms of manuscripts related to sciences, whether it is geography, chemistry, and physics, and mathematics, and so on. Therefore, Al-Furqan has identified, not to under politics of exclusion, but just for the sake of prioritizing, so it has identified 5 spheres which it concentrates its work in editing. Mentioned previously, I won't repeat them once again. The editing work is not a straightforward one, and it's an art which is dying as well. Hence, Al-Furqan took an initiative, beside many training courses on cataloging, to teach or to learn and to enable the new generations to catalog manuscripts. It started also recently, starting from the year 2008, with training courses on editing. So far 3 courses. We hope that very soon, next year, in the beginning of next year, we'll have the 4th training course, and Dr. Qasim is involved in that in Morocco, and hoping to continue with that shape in the future as well. The editing work, as I mentioned before, is an art, actually. It's a very difficult work. Only specialized people in that know how much effort needs a book to be edited. I'm not going to go into details. Those kind of questions tonight will be answered really by our distinguished lecturer tonight, which I'm delighted to present in a bit now. Dr. Qasim al-Samarrai, thanks a lot for coming tonight and for agreeing to lecture tonight on this very challenging topic, the critical edition of manuscripts, past, present, and future. As I mentioned before, it's a very broad title, but I'm sure that Dr. Qasim will manage in a very short time to give us an overview on that topic. And just before I give the floor to Professor Samarrai, I would just like to highlight some of his main stations in his academic life. I mean, this CV is very long. I'm not going to read it all for you. So basically, Dr. Samarrai is a professor of Arabic and Islamic studies, and his main focus tonight in his lecture will be a historical view on the critical edition of manuscripts, the critical edition today, the importance, needs, and challenges in the future, and the critical edition and its horizons in the future. So this will be the main 3 areas he will concentrate on tonight. And furthermore, he studied comparative mysticism for his doctorate at Cambridge University. He has held teaching posts at the universities of Cambridge, Baghdad, Leiden, Garion is in Libya, Ibn Saud in Saudi Arabia, and he has published more than 60 works. And we are very proud that Professor Samarrai is affiliated to Al-Furqan as well. He has done for Al-Furqan 2 interesting projects which we are proud with. Is Wafa al-Wafa, is an edited book on the history of the Prophet and Mecca and Medina and so on. It's in 5 volumes, and Al-Rawda al-Firdawsiyya is a book edited in 2 volumes. You can find a bit of small summary about these 2 books in the small brochure in front of you. Without losing more time, taking more time from you, I would like to invite Professor Samarrai, take the floor, and thanks a lot again for joining us.
Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It is lovely, really lovely to be again in Al-Furqan Foundation for a very simple reason. I know Al-Furqan Foundation from the beginning to the end. At a time when it was established in Wimbledon, I used to lodge in the same building and use the library for my edition. And it is lovely again to see you, all lovely faces, attending my boring lectures. But before I start, I can't praise the work Yamani has done. From the beginning, when I was asked to say something about Al-Furqan, that was almost 25 years ago, I described Yamani with few words: a lover of manuscripts. And he knows that. He devoted all his life, as he told us many times, with the encouragement of his father, to collect manuscripts and books in his own house. And from that, his motive to establish Al-Furqan was a brilliant idea. And I pray that his effort will continue with his distinguished son, Sharaf, to carry on the message of Ahmed Zaki Yamani with in the Furqan Foundation. Because I lectured myself in various institutions and various universities. And I myself established a department of manuscripts in the University of Ibn Saud in Saudi Arabia. And once I left, it was closed. It was closed. I tried my best to train students in the study of manuscripts, not only in the study, but to instill in them the love of working with manuscripts. Working with manuscripts is not a profession, it is a hobby. More than a hobby, it is love in its purest sense. One time I told my students when he asked me, why do you love working with manuscripts? I told him, listen, if you have a fiancée and you were away from her, and once you meet her, what do you do? He said, I hug her. That is the working with manuscripts. At any rate, I wish wholeheartedly that the work of Yamani will continue. Because most of the institutes I worked with in Dubai, in Saudi Arabia, even in Morocco, they began to go down. Why? Because the interest in manuscript is dying. And the training of students is dying. So I hope Furqan will take up the initiative of training students. And those students will carry on the love of working with manuscripts. Will you do that? Promise. Ladies and gentlemen, please bear with me if I am a wee bit mischievous. Why? Because I've seen lots of things, ups and downs, in my life. For the last 40 years of my working in various universities and various countries with Orientalists, with Arabs, with Kurds, with Persians, and the rest. And here I begin with saying, I must humbly confess that I am now in a dilemma. Why? Because the title of this lecture that I was provided with is The Critical Edition of Manuscripts, past. That is the past. Present and future. That's not all. A historical view on the critical edition of manuscripts, the critical editions today, the importance, needs, and challenges, the critical edition and its horizon in the future. The title appears indeed to be enormously intriguing. Perplexing, and surprisingly tantalizing. Which poses the big question: can I cover all these topics in such a short time? Surely not. The other question is, what shall I start with? Shall I start with the top, at the bottom, or at the middle, or the bottom? Now you choose. Should I start at the top, at the middle, or the bottom? Should I begin at the time when the Old Testament was written down from oral sources, sometimes after the Babylonian exile, and afterwards when it was edited and re-edited several times through the course of its long history? This is one point. Or should I turn my attention to the history of how and when the various parts and bits of the New Testament were first discovered and brought together, and again edited and re-edited many times in the course of its history? Or shall I jump the span of time to deal with the Roman and Greek mythology, legends, philosophy, and literature, which was in the main oral? All these topics, in fact, have been thoroughly and extensively dealt with in hundreds, if not thousands, of books and articles by very competent scholars. Luckily, the title was shortened, as it is here, the Critical Edition of Manuscripts, Past, Present, and Future. Right. Now to start with, the critical editions. Producing a critical edition of a text in any language is not an easy task to be taken or undertaken by anyone or everyone. You have no idea how tiresome and exhausting it can be. It is no less than recreating the text as the author would like it to be. Furthermore, it essentially requires specific qualification in the person who would undertake such a task. One must think that every copy of a manuscript constitutes a world of its own. No two copies would resemble each other at all, even if both were copied by the same scribe or the same copyist. Whatever he was, its author or a copyist. He must also, the editor, must also consider the fact that several versions of the same work might exist as many authors changed or revised their works in the course of their lifetime. But editing a manuscript needs requirements, not as any profession. A plumber needs to be trained, and an editor needs to be trained. And if he's trained, then there must be some qualification required from him. The first requirement of an editor is a maximum knowledge, but not minimum. A maximum knowledge, but not minimum, acquaintance with the subject matters as well as with the manuscript language in general, and the author's language in particular. As every author language or vocabularies are totally different from each other. In short, it requires much erudition. It requires much erudition and profound knowledge of every field of Islamic civilization. Now the question is, how many editors now existing in the Arab world who are endowed with such qualifications? You cannot count them on one hand. And I mean that. Second qualification, a comprehensive understanding of the scribe's terminology. Comprehensive understanding of the scribe's terminology, as well as their technical marks and symbols like muqabala, collating, or ilhaq. Ilhaq, for instance, like this one, which appears to be out of question or out of the place, but it means this one ought to be in the main text. This is called ilhaq. And there are symbols for that. It is not here, I don't see here. The symbol, every professional copyist uses this symbol, like, or other side, to mean this part must be inserted here, and this part must be inserted here. To indicate the place where the ilhaq ought to be inserted. The third qualification, in this respect, the editor must be extremely on his guard to notice the same notes, to notice that some notes might have been wrongly inserted by an ignorant copyist in the main text. And that happened quite a lot. When a copyist copy a copy from copy 1 or copy A to copy B, sometimes in the copy A, there are lots of commentaries. If he's ignorant, then he will include those commentaries in the main text. And a good, excellent editor must notice that those are apart from the main text, and it is interpolated in the text. The fourth, he ought to know the meaning of the symbols which are used by the copyist, by almost all copies, like balagha, qira'a, balagha ardan, bayaz, صح, نسخة أخرى, خاء, ضاء, نظر, صحيح, سهو. Those are symbols, they have their own particular meanings. If an editor is not acquainted with all this terminology, then he will be lost. But above all, the terminology used by the copyist in the East, that is, say, east of the Arabic world, are slightly different, used by those copyists copying Maghribi or Andalusian manuscripts. For instance, the term turra means margin in Andalusian and Maghribi, while in the Arabic manuscripts in the East, they use hashia. In the Andalusian and Maghribi, they use turra. And the letter, if an editor sees the letter noon in the margin, he must know what it means. It means bayan. That means it needs explanation. Then he would see raqqas. He would see raqqas. If he's not acquainted with the terminology of the Maghriban or the Andalusian, you think, what is the raqqas? Is a dancer. But raqqas means ta'qiba. Raqqas in Andalusia, in the Maghribi term, it means ta'qiba. And not all of that, the dotting of letters with accents and diacritical points, all of these differ as well considerably. We must as well know the system of arranging the kurasat. What does it mean, kurasat? It is katarna, it is quires. They call it malzama in printed system. But it is malzama 16 pages. In manuscript it is either 10 folios or 20 folios. Why he ought to know the system in order to determine whether this copy is complete or not. If he's not acquainted with the system of kurasat, then he's again lost. Then perhaps some folios are missing and he doesn't notice that they are missing. The other requirement, he ought to know the system of pagination and how the copyist uses symbols, letters, or numerals in either folios or volumes. If the manuscript contains more than one volume, then the system is totally different. Either he used the system of abjad, who was hotly colored, then it is totally different than if he uses numbers and so forth. If he is not acquainted with pagination system, then he's again lost. Why he is lost? Because lots of booksellers or owners, they obliterate if the manuscript of 2 volumes, for instance, if there are 2 volumes, if the manuscript of 2 volumes, and the owner or the bookseller has got only 1 volume, and you want to sell it, what he does, he obliterates the volume. For instance, al-juz al-awwal, he would have read juz al-awwal, and he let the buyer or whoever interested in the manuscript buy it as a complete manuscript. And this happens quite a lot. Now the other requirement, it goes to be known as ta'qiba. Why he must know the system of ta'qiba? Why? The ta'qiba is only one word written in the bottom corner of a folio. This was used in order to arrange folios together so that the binder wouldn't mistake the arrangement of the folios, of papers, of pages, whatever you call it. But once it is bound, the ta'qiba will be cut by the binder. And this is why, in the olden time, in the beginning of bookmaking in the Islamic world, it was written extremely at the end of the page. And once they gathered together and bound, the binder will cut them. And this is why we don't see ta'qiba at all in manuscript until the 6th century. Hijrah, 12th century, and the Domini. This is the reason. And some of the scholars who are supposed to be expert in codicology, they don't know that. They say, Arabic manuscripts at all, they never knew ta'qiba. That's not true. Not true. Because some of the manuscripts we have now at hand, we discern, we look and we find parts of words, very small parts of words at the end of the page, which shows that the ta'qiba used to be used by the copyists. Now we come to the common sense of editing manuscripts. Most, if not all, of the editors, I say most, if not all the editors, tend to select one copy, and they call it al-Umm. This is totally wrong. Why? Why? How can you judge this is the best of the copies? You can't. You can't judge that. Either you compare all the copies you collect, all the copies, and compare the text with each other, and you make a sort of stamina, then you don't know which is which one is the best of all. My own experience, which I did in my own edition, I never choose one copy. I tried my best to produce a sound, correct, without error copy from all the copies I collect. As I see it, I may be mistaken, but this method is not approved. This method is not approved by lots of those who work with editing texts. Because what they did, they take one copy, they collate it with other copies, and they fill the margin with all variation of differences, different readings, and they say, here we go, we have a correct copy. That is not true. That is not true at all. This method, which I just described, was the favorite of all the Orientalists of the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. Go on. Here we go. Here we go. When did critical edition began? It did not begin in the East. It began in the West. Only when manufacturing paper was widespread. And the Vatican began, first of all, to use the knowledge of printing in spreading their own message. The first to be printed in the Vatican in 1595, was the Bible in Arabic. Ever to be printed in Arabic was in Vatican. In the time in 1595, they published 4,000
they gathered together
copies of the
and
Bible
bound
to be spread among Christians in the East and Mohammedans, as they call it, for missionary purposes. As I mentioned before, collecting all the manuscripts and trying, I use sometimes Dutch word, forgive me. I lapse into Dutch instead of English. And sometimes they choose one copy and collate it with the others. And this was typical for Orientalists from the 16th century, 17th, 18th, and the beginning of 19th century, as we will see it here. This is the Bible, which the Vatican used very clumsy letters and block printing for miniatures. Go on. This is again Orientalist episode for converting Muslims and Christians of the East. This is one of the earliest books printed in the Vatican. This is again, this is all Vatican. This is block printed for the use of Muhammadan in Aleppo by a Dutch Orientalist. Here is again, in Holland, began Orientalism in printing Arabic text. This is one of them. This is again another one, which is the Bible. Go on. This Kitab al-Amsal, printed by Arpinus in Leiden. Go on. Here, this is the Bible. This is again here began in the 19th century began the real editing of text in Europe with the pioneering Orientalists like Westenfeld and Noldiker and De Goeje was very much interested in publishing the work of Al-Tabari, and he published historical works and geographical works in movable letters. Here is before De Goeje, Arpinus was one of the pioneers, and he wrote Arabic Grammatica, and that was the standard work of teaching Arabic in Europe, the whole 16th, 17th, 18th century, before the work of Sylvester de Sacy was introduced in the beginning of the 19th century. And as you see now, read this. قلت وقلتي قلت وقلتي قلنا وقلتما not قلتما. Because he learned Arabic from an Egyptian called Abu Dakan. That's true. That is historically true. He learned Arabic from an Egyptian called Abu Dakan, who lived in Paris in the beginning of the 17th century. So he taught him this, and he wrote a standard work in grammar called Grammatica Arabica. And this is part of it. Yeah.
هذه ممكن من قال يقيل نقيل.
نعم. And here we go back again to Arpinus, who wrote this grammar work, and he established a press house in his own house, and he began to publish some Arabic text. Go on. For instance, he published this one, Surat Yusuf, and then he published the history of Makin, one of Eastern Christian historian, and then Westenfeld in Göttingen, that's in Germany. That scholar was an excellent scholar. He was very, very objective, and he even wrote the whole book in his own handwriting, and he published it in this way. Publish it in a sort of facsimile, as we call it now, but with zingography, not with movable type. That is Westenfeld. Now, this is again Westenfeld, and here it is interesting to read this, what he wrote here. هذه النسخة العاشرة من كتاب الاشتقاق لابن دريد إلى خزانة الكتب التي للمدرسة بمدينة لايدن المحروسة. So he did not publish more than 50 copies at all. And this, one of them he gave it to Leiden University because he was a friend of Snooker Ochronia. Now, the age of critical edition, now we come to a real critical edition in Europe. And that is De Goeie. De Goeie is a very brilliant Dutch Orientalist. He did not busy himself at all with polemics, at all. He cooperated with most of the European Orientalists, and he established a sort of organization subsidized by European countries to publish Arabic texts. And he chose historical and geographical texts which he published. And those are his editions in cooperation with other European Orientalists. Go on. Right. And that is in the West. What is about the East? In Egypt, after Napoleon, some Egyptian learned Azhari scholars tried their best to remedy all the mistakes that occur in European publications and all the shortcomings. When Bulaq Press was established in 1820 and other printing houses followed suit, at the same time, or a bit earlier, Ibrahim Mutafarriqa in 1738 published few Arabic texts in Istanbul. The difference, as we compare nowadays publications and editions, if we compare them with those published by the Azhari in the Bulaq and the other press houses, they are much superior than the edited books now available in the market. With all the names, with all the lovely bindings, with gold and green and whatever it is, which are like fruits in a shop. But if you open it, it is disastrous. And I mean disastrous. It is full of mistakes, full of misunderstanding, and you cannot use it as a source for reference. If you use it, then you commit the same mistakes. Why? Because the Azhari publications were supervised and corrected by well-known scholars of the time. But the difference between the Azhari and the European used footnotes. The Azhari used marginal notes. Now, when you go back to editors, you see, this is what I'm talking all about, is a sort of survey, which has connected to each other. Because if I talk to upon one subject, then I need the whole time. So I jump from one topic to another with some connection between the former and the following. I said other scholars, that is who are busy with text edition, other scholars restrict their choice once they stumble upon what they think is an autograph or a copy copied from an autograph. In my own experience, scholars are not at all infallible human beings. Therefore, an editor ought to be rigorously on his guard and in dealing with autographs or copies taken from an autograph. As the copyists often copy the colophons as they found them without questioning the authenticity of the colophons. In many cases, the colophon or the title page is intentionally obliterated or changed by either the owner or a bookseller for commercial gains. We come to this. Other scholars spend enormous energy and time in editing a draft or a rough copy. That's مسودة المبيضة. While there are clean copies or even original autographs. Why do they do that? It is waste of time, it is waste of money. And some institutions did that. Now, a good editor encounters lots of obstacles in his work. The most important obstacle he ever encounters is what is called tahrif and tashrif. What is that? What is that? Tashrif and tahrif.
Misreading.
What?
Tahrif is changing the letters.
Distortions.
And tasrif is
Misreading.
Yes.
changing the page number.
The most common, frustrating, and tricky obstacles for any editor to overcome are tashrif and tahrif. It is called, in Latin, lapsus calami. Not lapsus calami. It is not the lapsus of the pen. It is lapsus of the copyist. What has the pen to do with mistakes or corruption of words? It is said in any way said to be a slip of a pen. It is not a slip of a copyist, which is easily passed without being noticed by the most diligent editor. And I say the most diligent editor. Some words in the text appear to be correct, but actually the copyist, who was not expert in the subject matter, would not understand these words and replace them with some familiar words, which he suggested to be correct. Such characteristics such characteristic phenomena lies in the realm of orthography, not in the correction. For instance, I came across one particular word which is in the Kitab al-Fihrist of al-Nadim. Since Flugel until now was published almost 10, 12 copies, 12 times. The same mistake, the same tasheef occurred. One time I was in Morocco. A student of mine came to me with a piece of Kitab al-Muhalla of Ibn Hazm. He said, "Sir, I can't read this. Could you read it for me?" I said, "Of course." I read it for him, and I came across a word. I said, "My God, that is of al-Nadim." Immediately I connected the two words. And I tell you what word?
What is it?
What?
What is it? The word.
The word as-safadima. The Nadim talked about professions, the singers, the traders, the others, and then he came was-safadima. And every editor until now, until the last one, he repeated the word without explaining what the word is. And as-safadima is as-sa'afiqa. As-safadima is as-sa'afiqa. But what's the meaning of sa'afiqa? Here, Al-Asma'i, well-known authority in linguistics, Al-Asma'i reports that Sa'afiqa is a group of people who attend the market for trading, for trading without having a capital. In other words, charlatans. Without a capital. If a merchant buys anything, they would force the merchant to be their partners. A single person is called sa'faqi, and this is to be found in every dictionary. It is very curious to observe that such corruption and many other occur in all Al-Fihrist editions since Flugel. And until now, in spite of the fact that the oldest and best copy so far discovered was copied directly by Al-Muzaffar Al-Fariqi from Al-Nadim's paragraph. So Al-Fariqi committed one mistake. Although he copied his copy from the autograph, he committed a mistake, and this mistake went on and on and on and on until today. But now it is no more, it is there. If anyone is intending to publish Al-Fihrist, then please refer to my correction. The editor would encounter as well, in his own copy, whether it's autograph or not autograph, he would encounter what we call ijaza, and a license. Most of the editors, I say most of the editors, ignore all this ijazat. They ignore it totally, while they are terribly useful for the editor to know the locality or date, the locality and date of the manuscript if it is not dated, and if it is not known where it was written. we come. This is a book written in 797. 797. It was read.
Hijri.
I talk only Hijri. I don't talk any Germany or Christian era, because I don't know it. What you see here, overall, they are all ijazat. When it was written, until the 10th century, from the 8th century until the 10th century, it went on to be read and transmitted from one generation to another. الأحمر يا أيها الأحمر. I don't see any أحمر. If you have a look here, yeah, this is the handwriting of a Sakhawi who died 903 or 900, I think 903. This is the handwriting of a Sakhawi. If you are acquainted with the Sakhawi who wrote الضوء اللامع في أعيان القرن التاسع, this is his handwriting. And the manuscript was written in 797, something like this. I'm working on this anyhow. And here is the ijazat of the same book, with different names, different attendants, different sheikhs, different students. Almost 200-300 students attend to hear this. Here, all names, all professions, and so sometimes children who's 2 years old, 3 years old, they come with their father and later. And paradoxically, they are authorized to transmit the book if they are old, because they attend the sama', and that is sama'. This is called sama', ijazat sama'. And this is why most of the editors, they ignore the sama'at, which are terribly useful for them to know where this manuscript was written and how it was transferred, was carried on from one country to another, from one town to another, and so on. Here is the last sama', but here, very interesting. There is very interesting. It is obliterated. Why it was obliterated? This is the question. This, you can read it with ultraviolet light if it is obliterated. It can be read easily. And this is ownership, registration of an ownership. That was obliterated. Because he said, I bought it for so. And the owner, he wanted to sell it more. So he and so on. Yes. Yeah. And that is sama'at. Right. And here is again the ownership, the owner or the bookseller, what he did, the name of the scribe, totally obliterated. What is left is only the date. Right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me talk a bit, as briefly as possible, about the history of printing, which has some bearing on text edition. You may think it is strange to talk about text edition coupled with history of printing. No, it has some bearing on it. The printing process went through, as we know, printing process went through many stages in history, starting with the use of small stamps. Khatam. In the old time, they used khatam. Akhtam. Or seals, which preceded the use of large blocks. The striking images of or inscription in metal coins using a mirror-like models, which consequently, I think, inspired block printing. So the use of stamps or striking coins, this method inspired printing on block printing. Everybody thinks that printing began in Europe. Block printing began in Europe. It is not. It began in China, and in the 7th century, and Islamic Hijrah began in Egypt. Printing by block, or they call it block printing. And this is block printing. And that is to inscribe the text mirror-like on block of wood and then print it on anything, on paper or on parchment or on papyrus. And we have more of these examples. For instance, this. It is just like a manuscript. It is just like a manuscript. This is again another one. This is another one. And here began the mold of striking coins. And that was the inspiration of block printing. All right. And this is again the same block printing. And then we come to the Vatican. In Syria, in the time of Mahmoud Zengi, he introduced paper money. He introduced paper money, which was called al-Qaratis al-Sud. Instead of metal dirhams or dinar or whatever, I think the metal was scarce in the time of Zengi because of the war with the Romans or with the Europeans in the Crusaders. So he began to introduce paper money. But one of the fuqaha advised him to abolish it, which he did. But in Baghdad itself, when it was overcome by the Mongols, in the time of Ghazan, Sultan Ghazan, the paper money was introduced. And at the time was called chow. The paper money called chow. But once the Ghazan was killed or dead, the chow was abolished. We have seen all or the publication of the Orientalists. I have 2 points to add here, if you allow me, which has some bearing on editing manuscripts in general. And that is an idea which was common among Orientalists in my time, even, and now, that Orientalists has to be acknowledged that Orientalists tend to look at any non-European heritage through a Western optic angle, or angle. That is a fact. Don't expect that Orientalists look at the East from Western perspective. No. From Eastern perspective, he looked through Western perspective, because his background doesn't allow him that. Therefore, I would like to take an opportunity here to dispel a common notion regarding at least one established notion propagated by some Orientalists, which has some bearings on editing Arabic manuscripts. Some Orientalists, and I know some, adhere to the fact that the edition of a text is no more than a philological process which was developed during the last 100 years at the hands of European scholars who engaged in perfecting such method while editing classical Greek and Latin texts. Their method, that's the European method, was to produce a clear version of the text, enumerate the reading differences of the text, and finally producing a correct version. They continue. As the Arabic philologists came much later, he had to imitate our method and therefore had to follow our steps, which we already discovered. which we have already discovered and established. The question here, is that so? Let us see. Either we accept this idea or refute it. As simple as that. Now, I have 3 examples. Really, I chose them at random, and all of them are manuscripts preserved in Leiden University. One of them called Al-Furqan Kitabiyya. One is called Al-Furqan Kitabiyya. It is very simple. I mean, you read, just read. قرأ
علي الرئيس أبو محمد الحسن بن حمزة بن محمد أحسن الله توفيقه هذا الكتاب من أول إلى آخر قراءة تصحيح وتفهم وموهوب ابن أحمد بن محمد بن الخضر الجواليقي حامدا لله تعالى ومصليا على رسوله في سنة 22 و500.
You have missed one word.
نعم وكتب صح نعم.
That is most important.
نعم وكتب يعني صحيح.
That is most important.
يعني وكتب يعني كاتب النسخة هو الذي كتب
The
السنة.
certificate.
صحيح.
He certified this book as authentic and sound. This is not only example. I show you another, which is a glaring example that what this chap, the Orientalist, said is totally wrong. Right. Go on. Go on. Okay. Here's another example. Again, this is a manuscript in Leiden. It is Ash'ar al-Hudaliyin. Now, if we read there, anybody read this?
تمت إشعار الهذليين عن أبي سعيد السكري رحمه الله.
بلغ
من أوله إلى آخره.
بلغ من أوله المولى الأجل. نظام الدين أو المؤيد. وهذا خطي له بالقراءة على وجه النسخة فيه. Why this one is obliterated? You know why? Because there is a number of the Jews. So this is another Juz, Juz al-Thani. And the bookseller, he wanted more money, so he obliterated it.
الجزء الأول الأول
الثاني اوكي المهم
الجزء الأول وكتب الجزء الأول
وخطي له بالقراءة على وجه النسخة فيه الأول وكتبه زيد بن الحسن الكندي أبو اليمن في أواخر محرم سنة 600. And anybody acquainted with the history of Islam, Abu al-Yumn al-Kindi is a well-known scholar, exceedingly known Baghdadi scholar. That's not all. We read here. كتبته من خط السمسمي وقابلت به نسخة الحميدي وبعضه مقامل بنسخة شيخنا هي إيمان الجواليقي التي بخط يده وبغيرها من النسخ الموثوق بها فصحت. Do you want more examples? That our method of editing manuscript is much better than theirs. Then you tell me. Go ahead. Shall I tell you another example?
Please.
Yes, please.
Go on. Here. Here.
تمت المقابلة الأولى بنقل إسحاق بن الحسن والحمد لله تعالى.
بالحنين والحمد لله أهل الحمد.
This is from the 3rd century to the 5th century.
وفرغ منه بخوزستان القصر أول صفر من سنة 24 أو 500 للهجرة. تذكرة بخط الشيخ أبي الحسن رحمه الله في هذا الموضع. قررت من نسخها وتعليقها في صفر سنة 95 و300 صلى الله على محمد النبي بخطه رحمه الله على ظهر الجزء الأول والثاني. عرضت مما في هذا الجزء من الفصل نسخة يحيى
من النص
من القص.
لا النص
من النص.
They didn't use the word الفصل for النص. It is common in the text, the scientific text.
Don't tell me what I know.
No way الفصل. نسخة يحيى بن عدي التي ذكر أنه نسخها من دستور إسحاق.
دستور is autograph.
دستور إسحاق وعرضها به 3 دفعات
من السرياني. نعم.
نعم.
ودفعتهم
الرابعة بالسرياني.
Anyhow, you don't need to read more. This is a glaring example, 3 examples. Really, I chose them at random to show you that the method used and invented by the Muslims in the earliest time was much better than the method they followed by Europeans, even in their own editions. Simply because, I'll tell you why. Most of the Orientalists, until the end of 19th century, they did not learn Arabic from a native speaker. Just like Arpinus, the Dutch chap, he learned from Abu Dhabi in Paris, and he wrote his book on Arabic Grammatica to be standard in Europe. They learned Arabic in their own study rooms. They did not learn it from Arabs. And this is why they commit mistakes. If you compare the edition of Dikhuya, from the history of Tabari to all his geographical works, which I showed them, you find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mistakes. Why? Because they don't understand really the exact meaning of some words in the text. And they go to dictionaries and they choose the wrong word, which they think it is suitable, but it's not suitable. They put it in the footnote as if it is the good word. And what our new editors in the Arab world do is the same. Either they recopy the edition of the Orientalists in verbatim, or they misuse the whole thing. And the text published nowadays is worse than even the Orientalist editions. So I said there's another point I would like to we have time? Well, I have very interesting point, but please go ahead.
Please, 5 minutes.
No, fine, I don't see anything.
Do I have 5 minutes?
No.
Right. Now, the last point I would like to point out, some of Orientalists, the most learned Orientalists in their subject, which is my colleague, anyway. I said a very learned scholar of pedagogy stated that the ruling of parchments are not known very well to us. He said some of the Hijazi characters, some of the manuscript Hijazi characters have preserved. Yeah. Some of the Hijazi characters have preserved the traces of ruling, which proves that the copies from the beginning were conscientious of the layout of the text. Therefore, it is ever so more curious to observe the conspicuous absence of traces of ruling in the majority of Qur'ans in ancient Abbasid handwriting. The regularity of the script makes one, however, suppose that the copyist used some system of some system to guide the lines, but of this no traces subsist. This is the statement of a well-known criticologist. And I said the same scholar who has reiterated the same statement almost in verbatim in another work. My answer is very simple. With all due respect and appreciation for his work in this particular field, the learned scholar seems to have overlooked the piercing system. What is the piercing system? It is used mostly for those who write Quran and other signs on parchments or vellums. Instead of using line, they use holes. They pierce the holes on this side of the parchment and the hole on this side of the parchment, and they stretch a thread either of silk or cotton between the two. And they measure the width of lines of ruling the parchment, and then they write. Or they use some sharp instrument to line the parchment. This system is called piercing system. Our friend didn't know this, and this is why he said that. And this is, I myself catalogued in one of the Saudi Arabian embassy libraries. Not an embassy, sorry. And here are the holes. You see it? And those holes were cut if all the book is ready or bound together. The holes are cut by the binder. And this is called the piercing system. And this is used by almost all the Muslim copyists in writing the Quran and other branches of learning. I thank you very much for listening patiently. To amuse you. This is the most difficult handwriting ever you come across. If you read it, I swear I give you all my salary.
He's impatient.
This is the only copy existed until now. This is the history of Medina by Ibn Shabba.
Should I try?
Your summary is
It's a pension salary anyway.
And I don't have salary.
I have witnesses. I'm going to read it.
Go on. Yalla ya Ahmed, read it. Read it. Well, before you they tried to read it, but they committed lots of mistakes. Even the published edition of the Tarikh al-Medina for Ibn Shabba, my God, really you get mad of the mistakes.
Anyway, started with
But it is for the trained paleographers, it is easy to read. I don't say I read it, but I can't.
Well, the problems are in the names. It's a mistake in the names of the people.
Even Samhudi in 1911, when he wrote Wafa al-Wafa, he depended on the same copy. He depended on the same copy, and he committed some mistakes in reading some of the words. Yeah, I discovered that, and I said I mentioned it in my edition. Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you very much for listening to me.
We'll keep you a bit more. Actually, I'm sure you agree with me that listening to Professor Qasim is a pleasure always, and I do thank you very much for sharing with us his insightful knowledge, vast knowledge, and also his long experience actually in this field. We are running late a bit. We started 15 minutes late, so if you have patience a bit more, we had planned a discussion session for half an hour. So if you agree with me, please, we'll do it half of that, so 15 minutes, and probably starting with some of this Professor Zawiya.
Go ahead.
Doesn't matter. Can you hear me?
Oh, I hear it very well.
Thank you. Well, from the same town as well.
Don't worry.
التحريف والتصحيف.
Yeah.
Do you think that was influenced by the Holy Quran? Because in the Holy Quran, and this is one thing, argument I use against Europeans who normally say that we should actually produce another edition of the Quran to be in keeping with the time. And that is 2 ayahs. The first one, it says, لا تحريف لكلمات الله. And the other one, it says, لا تبديل لكلمات الله. And of course there is a third one, it says, إنا أنزلنا الذكر وإنا له لحافظون. Therefore, there is no commentary on that. Is that actually the influence of what was given in your own lecture?
No.
I had too much detail.
The motive is very simple. The motive is, look, they call it the revisionists. Some of the scholars of the Bible, of the Old Testament and New Testament, they subjected those two criticism, to textual criticism. From the beginning, they wrote hundreds of articles and books about this. And they wanted to subject the Quran to the same method. And this is why. And they are known from Crowley to Winsbara to, they call it the revisionists. They wanted to revise the Quran according to how they revised the Old Testament and the New Testament. Yes. And I know it is a big long article written by Salehi, by Bahnam Salehi about this and in Arabica. He wanted to prove that some of the Sana'a parchments, they don't tally at all with the Quran known to Muslim now, because some of those parchments were palimpsests. They were washed and rewritten, and he claimed that he has photographed the lower layer of those palimpsests, and he found that there is difference between the first layer and the second layer and so on. And this is well known. I mean, he published in 1211.
Thank you, Doctor. I want to go back to the issue of the Nuskha al-Umm. Well, because I think the editors, they are obsessed by something, and it's repeated in their books. They said that is, we are going to try to edit the book and come out with the version of the book as it was written by the author, which is, I myself think it's not true in any way. But the question is, technically, if you don't select one copy as the Nuskha al-Umm, as the first codex, or the master copy, then are you going to, that means we are going to have at the end one edition or one text which is selective. It's a selective text taken from different manuscripts according to your own selection as editor. Is that what you mean with this? Or you are going to stick one copy? If you don't stick to one, if you stick to one copy, that means we choose one as.
No, I don't stick to one copy. The copy sticks to me.
Yeah. Okay. Then if you select, that means you have a selective text at the end.
No.
Which is not the nature of the text as it's delivered to you through the history.
No.
This is the point I want, please, some clarification on.
Well, thank you for the question, but I said already, one of the requirements to be distinguished, the editor must be extremely competent. And apart from this competence, is good in the language. If he's not good in the language of the manuscript and of the time of the author, the age of the author, then he cannot really produce an accurate version of the manuscripts. This is can be disputed. We can dispute this long time, but this is my opinion, and I said it in the introduction. Perhaps lots of people don't agree with me, but I accepted my method, and I produced the book, and it seems to be a good edition. I didn't have it.
Your works are well known.
Thank you, Professor, and I would like to take your advice. In the days of very advanced digital technology, we come across scanned pictures of original manuscripts, very nice handwriting. An ordinary researcher can go through it. How reliable it is?
Unreliable.
It's not edited.
Unreliable.
Unreliable. But what about taking part of it and partial editing? Saying if a subject I am searching in, and then I come across.
I know all your words.
Yeah. should I rely on it, or what is your advice anyway?
No, I said, I think in my lecture I said, don't rely on the manuscript. You have to be 100% sure of the text you quote. If you are sure 100% of the text you quote is correct, then you are at liberty to quote it. There's no doubt about it.
But some centers actually publish books containing scanned or offset pictures of manuscripts, and it's distributed. So, what do you say about that?
I think you better check it yourself.
I edited myself.
Edit it yourself. Yeah.
Okay, the next question, Professor.
Welcome to
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've just finished reading your great book, Ilm al-Iqtina',
Yes.
which is the science of paleography.
Yes.
And I really, I was humbled. It's a fantastic piece of work.
Well, thank you very much.
Bless you for it.
I don't deserve all this compliment.
I'm only a student in this area, but I have found it to be an excellent book, enormous amount of hard work on all sorts of subjects, including the history of paper and printing and so on. So I really would like to express my gratitude. This is really a fantastic piece of work.
Do you know it is not known?
Well, unfortunately, there are only a few copies around, I suppose.
Yeah, because it was published in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia.
Maybe perhaps. May I suggest that we do the second edition soon and get Al-Furqan published, because they have a wider wording.
No, I would like I like it to be translated, but who will do that?
Well, that would be an impossible task, because I found some of the words very complicated to translate.
Like what?
I mean, it would be very difficult, because some of the words and the symbol, the glossaries that are required. Of course, there is nothing impossible, but I think that it would be a fantastic piece of work in this whole area of manuscripts, and it is a book of public reading. Actually, I think the ordinary public can enjoy reading that. That's what I'm trying to say, because tonight's lecture was a bit more focused and very specialist. So please don't think that it's all like that. It's very entertaining reading that particular book. My question is that we've heard some numbers mentioned about the numbers of manuscripts around, and how many were edited and how many actually exist. I remember a few years ago I was confronted with this question, and I asked some experts, and you were one of the experts that I asked. I said, yes. I said, how many? I asked you, how many manuscripts you think there are in the world, and how many manuscripts have actually been edited. Now, I'm not going to remind you what you told me.
You tell me now because I forget.
Well, let's see. You said that minimum of 5 million, maximum 8 million, right?
Yeah.
But edited was 50,000 maximum, not a few, couple of thousand, Saleh, right?
So you are right. 50,000.
Can you please, because as an expert, we'd like to settle this once for all.
Yeah.
I mean, we asked Professor Darosh when he was here last time, and he was quite close to that as well.
No, I think apart from the awful editions, which I call awful, produced by awful printing houses, which I call it in my book Dar al-Zaghal. Do you know what that means, Dar al-Zaghal?
No.
They print counterfeit, they print fake money. Tazwir. That is, in particular in Beirut, they steal lots of editions and they publish it themselves, only for commercial gains. But I think my estimate is correct. 50,000 of the books published is true. Yes. But the number of manuscripts available in the whole world, it is no less than 5 million. Let they say, because I catalogued thousands myself in only 2 countries. I myself catalogued thousands. Because what do you mean by thousands? Because one volume can contain 50 risalas, 50 books, small books. It is manuscript. It is completely independent from others. One book contains 20, others contains 50. I have in my own position, a manuscript contains 70 books. So I can't say I have 70 books in my own library. So I think it is no less than 5 million Arabic manuscripts scattered all over the world. But how many catalogued? That is the question. Another question. How many catalogued? It is very few. Very few. And I know libraries, I know personally, libraries are not. And I asked to catalogue them free of charge, and they refused. What do you think of that?
What about sir? What about sir?
Asma.
Aim there.
Huh?
These libraries. Where?
They refused to tell me where.
Okay, the next question, please.
Yeah, I have a comment, but I have a brief comment about the previous question, first of all. Although we have about 5 million, perhaps, manuscripts, we actually have much fewer texts. So out of the 5 million, there's going to be probably 1 million of Quranic texts, manuscripts, probably 100,000 of Dala al-Khayrat and so forth. So probably, yeah, I mean, thousands of Dala al-Khayrat. But I have a comment about an important point you raised in your lecture, and that's the often negative role of the bookseller, who often introduces details into the manuscript which could be misleading to the reader, the contemporary reader, that is. And perhaps I could just give 2 examples from my own experience of manuscripts that tied into.
I know them.
Sorry?
I know them.
You what, sorry?
I know them.
Okay, yeah. So in one manuscript that I studied was titleless and anonymous, but you had a title added in a later hand in the first page, and my guess is that was added by a bookseller, and it's the wrong title and author, just to sell the book, because you can't sell a titleless book. And in another case, and this is a manuscript housed at the Chessabiti Library, you have an ownership note for Muhyiddin ibn Arabi in a manuscript dating to the, I think it was the 7th or 8th century, obviously after Ibn Arabi. And then you have another note in English saying that there's if you look at page X, you'll find an ownership note in the hand of Ibn Arabi, who's a famous Sufi. So obviously that was added by a bookseller who was selling to a European buyer to make this a more valuable manuscript. So I'm just I just wanted to highlight this point because I think the economy of manuscripts is still very much understudied, and it would be good to have a dedicated study of the subject.
You're perfectly right. Yes. I happen to be my supervisor, who was an arborist, cataloged just a bit. It's well known.
It's it's a handless and full of mistakes.
Well, I discovered some of them that were wrongly attributed to authors.
Yes.
There's not a secret. In the history of our culture, it is well known. Some books were attributed to wrong authors. It's well known. Imam was attributed to Ibn Qutayba, and it is not Ibn Qutayba. And I can quote some examples like this. There's no secret. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt again, but what about the idea, the notion that most of the unauthored manuscripts were actually authored by ladies?
By ladies?
Yes.
That's possible. I don't know this, but I know quite. I cataloged some manuscripts authored by ladies.
Their names are
It was known, yes. But listen, the most difficult thing for a cataloger is not a lady or a man. It is to find the name of the author or the title. Lots of manuscripts are void of title or author. And most of the catalogers, they are ignorant. They say, kitab fil-fiqh, kitab fil-kalam, kitab. And even I came across Kitab al-Hayawan al-Jahar, I put it in geology.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Professor Samarrai, for the brilliant lecture. As you said, you couldn't cover everything in this lecture. I do want to remind myself and remind remind the colleagues that the world of Islam and the world of Arabic are not coterminous. And if we look, for example, at the history of textual scholarship in the Iranian world, Persian texts, I hope Professor Landolt might bear me out in this, await his judgment trepidation, but I think there's been a wonderful flowering of textual scholarship in Iran from the mid-20th century onwards, now heightened by the fact that whatever else is wrong with the political body in Iran is run by scholars, and this has helped to increase this trend. With reference to particularly when textual criticism skills began to be developed among Muslims, my own work, such as it has been, is in the field of Jalaluddin Rumi, famous character in Persian literature, and I found looking at the manuscripts of his Diwan, we're talking about the early 8th, 14th century Hijri at the latest, you see that there are three manuscripts, for example, manuscripts A, B and C. They're known to have been in the same place at the same time. It's virtually certain. Copyist D is working there, and some of his variants come from the manuscript A, some from B, and some from the C. It's not definite, but it strongly implies that he's done some careful looking between and comparing things. We go up to the 17th century, actually in India. There's a scholar who's enamored of Maulana Rumi and this tradition, and he establishes what he takes to be, what his ambition is that it should be Nuskhi and Nasikha in Masnavi. Here's the one that abrogates all the other editions because he's found the right one. So he went around to India collecting manuscripts and getting the best text that Masnavi he could. But unfortunately, centuries before those texts become corrupted, especially in India. So, but it was an attempt. It wasn't very successful. We didn't know the best manuscripts are all in Asia Minor or in Iran. So these things happen, Yanni. This is just another jihad, another aspect of textual scholarship in the Islamic world, and there are happy stories there, and I think we have things to learn from, who knows, editors in Turkey, in Iran, in the Soviet Union, other parts of the world. Thank you.
All what he said is beside the subject.
الموضوع يعني النسخة تحقيق النسخة.
But our examples are much earlier and older than your examples.
الأصول يعني the principles of the principles يا سيدي. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, I think the next one, please, the next question.
Many thanks, Doctor, for your lecture. I found it very interesting. I'm definitely one of the lay people here. There seems to be a very a specialist.
We are all lay people.
Well, as a layperson, what strikes me is the future of manuscripts in general and the study of Islamic manuscripts in particular. How do you make it more democratic? I mean, if the study of manuscripts is subject to the conditions of cataloging and editing, then what happens to people who just want to study manuscripts for research, students in colleges? I mean, does that remain difficult?
It is not difficult. If you train people, I said it, the institute and university must now and then try to train people who are interested in studying manuscripts. Would they do that?
What does the role of technology? Can technology help?
It helped tremendously. Of course, yes. Yeah.
Well,
I think our problem is the training.
Actually, I've got Abdurrahman. I want somehow to sum it up because we are getting quite late.
Quickly. Thank you for the lecture. Quickly, if I had for the issue of selecting manuscript among, if I have for example 3 or 4 or more, in my opinion, is might be easier to find the one which is written by the writer himself. Possibly, yes. Possibly the second option is to find the manuscript which is written by the student, his student, or the contemporary manuscript, as well as if I can find the nearest time, which is the next century possibly. This is my opinion regarding, the preference of the different manuscripts. Second issue, you said maximum of knowledge. This is hard to say. Maximum of knowledge, we may not find the maximum of knowledge except by, of course, Allah, the Creator. Yeah. So what to suggest as conditions for? What do you suggest as conditions to? Because the main objective, I think, for the proofreader is to go and put the right word. And maybe the best tool for that is the word trust, with trust. So should be 100% sure that this word is an accurate word in its place. So what do you suggest? For example, if we take the issue of students, like master PhDs and this stuff, they are limited by the time, yes? You don't have, of course, the maximum of knowledge. If we choose, for example, those who are not specialized in Islamic studies, for example, how can we, for example, accept a manuscript, but the proofreading is made by someone who's specialized in, I don't know, in different field, which is, we can see a lot of people doing the proofreading as kind of business these days. What do you suggest as conditions to prevent all this happens?
You know as well as I know, lots of theses were written for money. They were not written by the students. They were written for them. Don't you know that? Even editions were done for money. Don't you know that?
Yes. Okay, I think it's clear. The next one, please, Dr. Abbas, then Yasmin, and the last question.
Thank you very much. I'm sure I can speak on behalf of everyone.
You are most welcome.
In fact, with regard to changing the titles of manuscripts by modern proprietors or editors. I remember, for example, the most recent is Kamal Abudib's work on Al-Asfahani. He changed the title to Rubaiyat Al-Asfahani, but in fact the original title was a very long time. Similarly, prior to that, you have got publishers who changed Kitab al-Muwashsha in order to have some sort of an equilibrium. My question is how to actually raise the level and awareness of people who are cataloging manuscripts and editing them, where there are no tools for both parties.
This is not, next to my heart.
So how could we actually do it?
Very simple, Marshall. Training, training, and training.
Training without actually having some guidelines, i.e. if you were to have, let us say, scribes, if you were to collect the samples of manuscripts to show actually how the scribes they are writing, the orthography of the manuscript. At the same time, we don't have sufficient biographical dictionaries. The latest, for example, Al-A'lam, it is full of mistakes. You find, in fact, the Zuragli, rahmatullahi alayh, he mixes between the son, the father, and the grandfather. He attributes the same.
Quite a lot,
And that is a problem where most of these scholars, certainly people who are editing texts, they fall in the same trap.
That's true. That's very true.
So in fact, I hope that probably Al-Furqan take upon itself to produce some sort of a compendium to show how the various scripts are done by the various scribes.
Excellent. That is a problem.
Small comment to make, if that's all right, on, in fact, your question and also what you were saying. And I think, in fact, we cannot rely on catalogues and description of manuscripts. We should not rely on it anymore. Because there are too many. And as librarians, that's my background, we also rely on legacy data kind of thing. But I think our task is to make the material available with modern technology as best as we can, but not really do the research for the researcher. Because in the end, the future of manuscript research depends on people like you, for example. You have access to digital images which can be very punctually described, but that should be enough for you to work with. You have fantastic facilities of high-resolution images, for example, where you can examine the manuscript much better than using the actual text in many ways. And I think that's really the future. And there are quite a few courses now. I mean, the subject in itself is evolving, definitely. Within the past few years, there have been several workshops and courses in Leiden, in Leipzig. We have one every year in Cambridge. There are several reference works by Adam Gatchik, for example. I think his Vademecum is a fantastic work. It's a very good start. And there are many people out there who do actually know quite a lot. And I think the more students show an interest in these sources again, because the subject has been derived from classical Middle Eastern studies to modern Middle Eastern studies quite a lot for obvious reasons. But if this is revived with the study of manuscripts and the use of sources, there is definitely a good future with the means that we have.
I ask you a question. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Have you worked with manuscripts? Have you ever worked with manuscripts?
Yes.
Have you ever seen 2 pages glued together?
Yes.
How did you open it?
I didn't open it. This is the work of a conservator.
Conservator? Suppose some of the texts are obliterated between the two. How do you restore it with a high technology?
No. There are different professions that are involved here. We are the curators, there are the photographers, and there are the conservators. And we have to work together, and we do work together as far as the funds allow. But clearly, the photographer does not touch a manuscript or turn the pages, and as a conservator,
where do I fit? Where do I fit?
I should return the question.
It's all right.
Okay. I think I'll have to stop here. I really apologize for all those who raised the hand, and I'm sure that there are many other questions. But thanks a lot once again on your behalf, Professor Qasim, for joining us tonight for this insightful lecture. Thanks a lot. I know it's quite late. If I may ask you for patience of not more than 3 minutes. I mean, it was supposed that we'll take only 5 minutes, we'll reduce it to 2.5 probably. I'll ask kindly Karima to just walk us very briefly throughout our new website, as we informed you in our invitation previously that we are launching our new website tonight, and we are quite excited about that. It's still in its beginnings, but just to give you a taste and a glimpse of the new website, and probably in the near future it's going to develop. And also you are most welcome with your proposals, critiques and so on. It's the very first step of the website, and we are waiting for the most exciting part, which is the online database, to be included hopefully somewhere next year. So please, Karima, if you could just walk us through the website.
Sorry, what more second?
It's not the same. This moment mostly on language. Goes to the Kalam position hadith. Yeah, earlier hadiths have a more distinctly, whereas later hadiths are more inclusive. That's something to go.
There were people who explored it. There were critical process. So when you were trying to choose between persons, it doesn't pay to underestimate these guys. For all the same thing, but there were people who did some practical judgment. From my limited experience, there were people who exercised critical judgment. This is textual proof. It may not have sort of been the university press or something or the other, but people's erudition was fine. Because it depends on the situation. Every text is different. You've only got one decent manuscript. That's why I use it. Other cases, you've got tons of them.
So, everybody had the same experience then, correct? Okay, well, this is our new website. Hopefully you will have time to browse through, and certainly like us on Facebook, which is down there. But the new website brings the three centers together, and that's the Manuscript Center, Maqasid Center, as well as the Mawsu'a. This is the first time we're bringing the centers together. So hopefully you will be able to keep up with the foundation's activities, publications, which you're more welcome to browse through our navigation, which will be also available throughout the websites to help users find their way when you have a speed connectivity and a nice laptop, especially in Apple it looks much better. I'm an Apple fan, obviously. Each of our publications have a description, and sometimes when there are articles related, it will be connected as well. The interesting part about the website, obviously, it looks good, I think. I hope you like it. But you can also have an overview of where the foundation has been and what it has done by following our footsteps and work throughout the world. The aim of the website also is to interact with people
with the users, and also encourage awareness of the Islamic manuscripts. It's not an archaic or hopefully a dying discipline, but it is something that touches us in every shape and form. We just don't realize it. You can join our community, which is growing, and by submitting your interest area, and hopefully we will update you regularly on that. There is a quick access which enables you to either purchase, apply for a project where there are forms you can download, and depending on the center of the interest area, then we're more than happy to receive your application. Also, the online library, which I think is more the exciting part, is coming next year, and that is to answer your kind question, which is the technology encouraging the world of Islamic manuscripts. And hopefully the foundation not only is busy cataloging, editing manuscripts, but also bringing access to this world that people are debating whether it's 3 million, 5 million. So hopefully the foundation can answer this question at some point. We've started in cataloging manuscripts online. It is not available yet. It will be available to the public hopefully next year. But what is more exciting about the library, which everybody is welcome to visit and use, there's treasure and wealth of information in-house, and we have more than, well, I would say 3 million records available in our library. We are very proud of the World Survey of Islamic Manuscripts. It has catalogued, well, not catalogued, but looked into 106 countries in the world. I would say from the UNESCO, there's 196 countries. So we've looked at quite a lot. The library holds catalogues from 76 countries. So that's quite a large number. The idea and the utopian scenario would be to have these catalogues all available online. But we're starting with putting the foundation content online to start with. Now, what that will help from a library point of view, I'm sure librarians get very excited because it needs cross-searching. And I think for editors and for manuscript specialists, that is a tool for them to start finding things, because we talk about edited text, we talk about catalogs, we talk about manuscripts, but we only have Google. Where would you start to find a manuscript? Where would you go to find whether this manuscript has been edited? Unless you're a specialist, or unless you know Professor Samarrai, you would email him, but if you don't, what do you do?
I don't give my email.
Well, you still have knowledge, Professor. But that's the reality. We have knowledge. There are things, there are big words. This is not big words. This is knowledge available to everyone. And one of the aims of the foundation is to make it this way. Accessible, people could deal with it, study it, and bring out the gems. All these big words, editing, cataloging, at the end of the day, we're trying to bring the knowledge that's buried out there to improve our lives in every shape and form. And the foundation aims to do that by the various activities that it does. And hopefully the website is a window to keep all this information in one place. The interesting part of the website, which kept us awake at night, is that it has all the information, all the activities, and all the projects since it was established. So hopefully you're not going to be missing out on anything we've done, and you will be with us all the way. I thank you very much.
Karima is the head of our library and online database department, and the main weight this department carries in this way. I'm not going to take any more long. I do appreciate your patience so far. It has been a great pleasure to have you all here. I hope that you'll have many fruitful visits in our website and keep in touch with us. And most welcome your proposals. Don't forget to apply for a project. We are looking after projects which obviously relate to our fields of interest, but most welcome to apply on that. And thanks a lot for coming tonight, and look forward to have you and to see you again in our future activities. All the best.